Okay, it's 9:30 and it's the 6th of October, and this is our EdgeTalks for this month. My name is Janet Wildman. I'm an associate working with Horizons in NHS England. We've got a fantastic session lined up for you this morning, but before I go into that, I'd just like to let you know that if you would like to be a member of the EdgeTalks in the future and receive regular notification of our meetings, and to participate in making the sessions as engaging as possible through our Twitter and chat room, why not indicate to us who you are, how we can stay in touch with you through the chat room. The other thing I'd like to mention to you before we get into the session, that if you are connecting via your computer today, we do have a video lined up, so why not take the time to just turn up your volume and monitor so that the session will run smoothly. So without any further ado, I'd like to just tell you that the session today is going to be focusing on reshaping healthcare enterprise by design. And today I'd like to welcome John Gotz and his colleague Milan Guta, and they're from Enterprise Design Associates. And so we're so pleased to have you, and thank you for sparing the time to come and speak to us for an hour on EdgeTalks. This is we're just looking forward to this session, and we know that it's going to be fantastic. So if you're joining us today and beyond, why not use the chat box as we have been doing? There's been a lot of conversation on the chat box already around people's interest in this area, and thank you for everybody who shared resources, and please continue to do so throughout the session. So contribute on the chat box throughout the webinar, as well as join us on Twitter using the hashtag #EdgeTalks and the handle @HorizonsNHS. You can also send a request to join our Facebook group, Schools for Health and Care Radicals and the Edge NHS. So there's lots of ways for you to stay in touch with us, and I'd love to stay in touch with you as we move forward and beyond. So who am I? So first of all, my name is Janet Wildman, as I said, and I'm from Horizons. But presenting today, and a big applause from everybody who's joined the session to our presenters, John and Milan. And they're from Enterprise Design Associates. And they're going to tell us today a little bit more about their company, a little bit more about their expertise and their subject matter as they go forward. So I'm going to leave that to them at this stage. Okay.
All right, thanks, Jeanette. So this is Milan. Just a little correction. So I'm from Enterprise Design Associates. John is from Qualiware. So we are two companies, and we are collaborating since a while. And yeah, as you can see on this slide, actually, this talk has been made possible by an intense collaboration with our network. So yeah, we have been active in the space of enterprise design since 2009. We are working very much, very intensely with Qualiware on making tools that are appropriate for dealing with complexity and in this endeavor of reshaping enterprises. Also, this session has been made possible by Qualisoft, which is the Norwegian I would say, entity of the Qualiware family. So thanks to Qualisoft also for making this connection and making this talk possible and contributing to the session. And then we invited, or we reached out to two other partners from our network, which is NetLife. It's a digital user experience design and digital strategy consultancy in Oslo, and Customer Care Words, who are a customer experience specialist group, also organized as a network in, well, Jerry McGovern, the founder, is in Dublin, but then the network is almost everywhere as well. So yeah, thanks for everyone for making this possible. And yeah, because we are organized as a network, you will see that we are used to stealing a lot of, being heavily inspired by a lot of content from what's going on in the network, what people are doing at the cutting edge of design thinking and reshaping enterprises. Especially today, we will have a blend of disciplines ranging from user experience design, design thinking to enterprise architecture, business architecture, and talk about how these things fit together. Yeah, just 2 words about us, so Enterprise Design Associates. We started actually out as a design agency. You can see some of our marvelous creations at the bottom. We have been basically founded on the premise of doing this idea or pushing this idea of enterprise design, saying that what we actually want to do as designers is to help entrepreneurs with their enterprise, and everything that we do, be it a software, an app, a model, an event, a paper prototype, you name it, is actually just a means to an end. It is there only as it is only useful as far as it helps us innovate and transform enterprise people relationships. And the current state of our company is that we are still a small company. We have 3 partners and about 10 associates, so people who are not employed but working with us a lot on projects. And then we have a network of partners globally, which are consultancies, agencies, large and small. And we do everything we can to make enterprises deliver, and this is also what we will talk about today. This idea of enterprise design has been, in 2012, resulted in a book called Intersection that introduces the base framework that we are using for enterprise design, integrating the different perspectives. And we also just a few weeks ago had our 4th Intersection conference in Barcelona. We do one every year, and you can check out on the conference website the YouTube channel. Also, we recorded all the past talks, and we are about to cut the talks from this year and add them in hopefully a few. Well, I won't make any promises. And yeah, John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So my name is John Goetze. I'm from Qualiware, a Danish-based, Denmark-based software company and consulting company. According to Gartner, we are what is called a leader in the Magic Quadrant for enterprise architecture tools. So we deliver a platform for enterprise architecture, but really we see the scope wider than enterprise architecture, because some people say it's a very specialized discipline. So we worked with general management systems, we work with digital transformation, we work with governance, risk, and compliance. These days we do a lot in GDPR, because everyone in Europe needs to work with that, so there's some market opportunities we see. Our basic idea is highlighted here in the slides with the 3 C's, we call them: coherency, consensus, and consistency. The basic idea is that coherency is essential to any type of enterprise. I would actually add especially in healthcare, but we work in other sectors. It's also very important in the oil industry, for example, or in government in general, and so on. The idea of coherency is really that we need to understand how everything works together, and changes here, how do they impact over there, and so on. That's very, very often one of the reasons why new initiatives go wrong, that you haven't thought about the full context. So a lot of system thinking actually goes into understanding the coherency of an enterprise. The consistency part is, of course, that it's very confusing if people don't speak the same language, so to speak. So interoperability, organizational, but of course also technical interoperability is crucial. We've seen so many examples where sheer semantics are problems in communication and data exchange. Since we're a Scandinavian company, we focus a lot on creating consensus. The Americans don't really like it, and we call it collaboration if they don't really like it. But anyway, the idea of getting people on board with the same thinking, the same ideas, the same understanding of a problem context is very, very essential. And that's one of the reasons also why we find a great interest in working with designers like Milan and his team, and the whole design thinking approach is, I would actually say, very natural to us. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Back to you, Milan.
All right, thanks, John. Yes, design thinking. So you might have seen this cover of HBR, where they say design thinking is actually no longer just for products. Executives are now using this approach to devise strategy and manage change. Now, if you are with the people who came up with the term design thinking, you would think that this has always been the case. But people are now getting aware of that. And so this is from September 2015. So since then, people know that design thinking is so much more. And if you want to actually do design thinking in a context of complexity, you can very quickly get lost. This is a kind of metro map of our friends from Deloitte, they're calling this the agile landscape, and it's all the methodologies that you might want to look into, adopt and integrate and combine when you want to do agile, lean, UX, service design, design thinking, you know. So you have stuff on there like, yeah, like design thinking, like Scrum, like DevOps. You have philosophies like Kinefin, methodologies that have been around for a while, or approaches like Kaizen. And this is the reality that we see in many organizations, in many client organizations, is that they try to come up with something that fits their context, but then the complexity quickly gets overwhelming of the enterprise environment, and also of the challenge of bringing together all of this thinking. Yeah, so just one clarification when we're saying enterprise design, and so it's important to say what we mean or what we refer to with that term. So that term has been around also a while. It's coming from French, from entreprendre. And we like to see it as this, you know, the second definition from dictionary here, an undertaking or project, especially daring or courageous, willingness to undertake risky a new project, energy, initiative, active participation. Then, of course, it also means a company, business, organization, or other purposeful endeavor, but there the boundaries are often not very clear. But for us, it's really this idea of there are some entrepreneurial people, and they have an enterprise, and this is the true scope that design needs to appreciate in order to deliver. So in that sense, of course, in the healthcare sector, a hospital would be an enterprise. The healthcare system, the NHS, would be an enterprise. A big party that you organize for all NHS people nationwide would also be an enterprise. Enterprises are often managed like this. This is Michael Porter's value chain that you get very familiar with when you do an MBA or look into management theory. So you have this chain, and for some reason the supporting activities on top. And all the disciplines that we work with or like to work with often have trouble fitting in. And we especially like to integrate or work with people coming from these disciplines who have trouble fitting in, like design thinking. We also see customer experience, enterprise architecture, service design, product strategy, UX on this map. And what happens when enterprises are managed in a very traditional way, and we have a lack of these integrated forces, is that they become awkward. So we just launched a Twitter account called EndArc. You know the EndArc. If you're from enterprise architecture, you know the EndArc hashtag. So the EndArc is kind of the corresponding hashtag when something goes wrong in the enterprise and the enterprise behaves awkward. And yeah, whenever you tweet something with EndOrg, like if you find some funny picture, for example, of some enterprise awkwardness that's happening to you, the bot will retweet it. So enterprise awkwardness manifests in many ways, but this is a line that we all have heard. You call an enterprise, they tell you that your call is extremely important, but they make you wait a long while. And when you finally get someone on the call, it's the wrong person, it's the wrong silo. They ask you again and again who you are, what you want. They forget stuff, and yeah, so it's very. It's actually a good exercise when you want to evaluate enterprise awkwardness to imagine what would this behavior look like if it were a person and not an organization that I'm dealing with. And we have one example that is coming from customer care world, and it has been a very powerful example in the Norwegian case that I'm about to talk from NetLife Research. About yeah, what happened when you it's actually an example from the NHS, and it has been fixed, so this problem doesn't exist anymore, but I still like to use it as an example of enterprise awkwardness applied on a website, but also when dealing with an healthcare organization in general. So Paul, I think you have to play the video.
Yes, good morning everybody, that's correct. I'll start the video now. It's only about 2 minutes long, and if you've connected via your telephone, the sound will still play through your computer. So please make sure your speakers are switched on.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, just an example.
There you go, John.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So as you see, this is about. So Jerry McGovern is our partner when it comes to prioritizing basically what to work on in enterprise design. And I will talk a little bit about how we are doing that and how we are integrating this. And this is a video. This was a video that made a lot of impact in the work NetLife did with the Helse-Direktoratet. So that's the Norwegian NHS, I would say. And yeah, just as a little outline of today's session based on that, on this introduction. So what are challenges worth tackling? How can we make sure that we are working on the right thing? How to work with systems at scale, and then at the very end, I'm going to share, I'm going to switch on my desktop screen sharing thing if it works, and show you how we also use QualiWare's tools in order to model enterprises and how to use it in design sprints. Yeah, so how do we make sure that we are actually working on the right thing? So we are in a context of complexity, and Jerry's example is very fitting, because you're dealing with this. You're dealing with hospitals that are organizations. When you search hospital on Google and you click on images, you get often pictures of the outside. So it's an overwhelming large organization. It's not very well. It's like you said. Imagine the behavior that you experience when dealing with healthcare systems actors, like as if you were dealing with a person, and often you get awkward things. So they might scare you. They might be unhelpful. They might not help you in very difficult situations, actually. And they still might think that they are actually performing well, or even doing better and being patient-centric and being well designed, because of that enterprise awkwardness that is inherent and just comes with scale, and it comes with the complexity of these kind of systems. And if you switch to digital channels, this was the University Hospital in Northern Norway homepage. You see a lot of stuff, lots of numbers, lots of you have news, you have jargon like work at UNN, no one knows what that means. Okay, so, to be fair, all of this is in Norwegian. Even if you speak Norwegian, you're overwhelmed by this. And this is a typical web front end of enterprises that comes about through many stakeholders saying, I want this, and I need that on the homepage, I need this, I need that, I need this. And for us, so in our framework, we call this a rendering, just as the hospital outside or the inside is a rendering. So it's a way for the enterprise to manifest itself in reality. And when we talk about enterprises as stakeholders, the enterprise is often this elephant in the room. So in many projects, it's easier to say, okay, our scope is just this. We are just working on the mobile app. We are just working on the interior. We are just working on, you name it. And no one wants to appreciate that the elephant is actually much bigger, and that there are many people around trying to understand it, trying to reshape it, but they are all blind. They all see only part of it. So our way to deal with that is to say, okay, the enterprise is actually the space of intermingling concerns, and we all have ideas how to change it. We have a lot of constraints. We have questions to be answered. We might spot opportunities, and there are concerns and risks to be dealt with. And the enterprise is basically this box that we can turn around. We can look at it. We can try to model it, try to understand it. But it's very difficult to get a full understanding. And our toolkit basically is based on this hard component that we call the stack. This is also what the book Intersection is about. It's a framework to navigate complexity in the enterprise by looking at it from different perspectives, from the very big picture. So who are we? What is the experience? What is the role that we strive to have in people's life? And how is the overall architecture of our enterprise? How does it work? Down to the rendering. So how does it manifest itself in reality? And then lots of conceptual aspects in between that correspond more or less to disciplines and competencies that and perspectives that we want to pull in order to understand and model what the enterprise is doing and what it is actually supposed to do. And there you have elements from service design, from enterprise architecture, from business, from human-centric thinking, from systems thinking, from interaction design, information architecture, organizational design, and so on. And yeah, we don't usually say well, you can't do all of them at once. You can't do all 20, but you should have an understanding which ones you want to focus on right now, given your challenge and given your context, and why. And just to give you the full picture, so the way we want to use it in projects is actually to establish this as a common language, to say, okay, we make a model of our enterprise. We give people, be it designers, stakeholders, analysts, architects, consultants, you name them. We give them this toolbox, and they can express themselves and model and make sense of the enterprise using these terms. Initially, it's often very hard to get to the right challenge and the right scope, which is why we introduced this methodology that is actually based on Jerry McGovern's top task methodology. So we use our stack and we turn it into a questionnaire, and you have the same aspects and the same layers, and they are basically boiled down to this very oversimplified statements like services, where you have the whole discipline of service design, service logistics, service delivery behind, and we just reduce it to bad services or valuable, helpful services. And this is a online survey that we ask actually people to fill out in SurveyMonkey, and then it gives you this heat map. Okay, many people say it fails to deliver. So it's clear what they stand for. They have a nice brand and everything, but they fail to deliver. They add more and more features in Flutter maybe. So it gives you this radar, this very basic pointer compass, basically where might we take action. So this is one survey that is being deployed in the top task survey. In the Norwegian case, they had the challenge to work basically on the entire landscape of hospitals and healthcare access. Even though Norway is a much smaller country than the UK, there are lots of them. What they did basically is the survey that is called the top task survey. So it basically works like this. You make a very long list of tasks that people might want to do. Every stakeholder can put in tasks that they think people might want to do, patients might want to do. So again, sorry, this is in Norwegian. But and then the survey basically asks which one are the 5 most important ones for you, and you get a list of about 100 tasks, and you select the 5 most important ones for you. And the magic of the methodology is that they usually you have very few tasks that are the top tasks that are the top 25% of the vote. You have then tasks that are still important that make the next 25%. But in this case, you see it's 14 tasks in total that are 50% of the vote. The other tasks, 51% upwards, are tasks that might be important for certain people, but they are not the ones that the majority of people comes to the enterprise for. So this, referring to the comment just put in the chat box, this is actually in the chat. This is actually a methodology that we use to get evidence that the challenge that we chose to work on is valid, that this matters to patients, and ultimately we are designing for patients. You can also use it for employee experience, so you ask staff what is important to them, what matters to them. It has been introduced for websites, but we use it actually for as a customer and employee experience measurement tool. So each of the tasks that is important is a good challenge to work on, and it also it gives you something to measure. So if you're performing well at delivering this task, then you're performing better. The opposite side of this kind of survey is that it gives you the tasks that are tiny tasks, so tasks that are not important. And you all know maybe intranet or website pages, the public websites, where you have lots of news. And this is what enterprises like to do. Introducing a lot of, or telling people about how cool they are, how well they are doing. Lots of self-centered messaging that gets in the way when people come and actually want to tackle one of their top tasks. So in this case, in the Norwegian case, the 2 top tasks that came out that they decided to focus on were symptoms and what happens to me during receiving treatment and during receiving care. And this has been put into personas. So, for example, this story. So, what is wrong with me? What kind of treatment do I get? What happens to me afterwards? You have also practical things like how can I get to the hospital? Where can I park? What is the building? Can my spouse with me, and so on. And it's difficult to find the answers, regardless what touch point, if it is a physical touch point, if it is a virtual touch point, if it is some combination. So tackling these tasks actually requires appreciating basically the whole enterprise, the whole system as potential field for intervention, for design, and for transformation. There's also this message from Kaiser Permanente, one of the healthcare heavy insurance giants, saying a well-informed patient is a good patient. It's cheaper to deal with a well-informed patient than with a with someone who doesn't have a clue what's going on. There's a question together from the chat. No?
Okay, we have Kate with us, who will be able to feed back to you regarding any themes or questions that are coming up in the chat. Kate, are you able to feed back at this point?
Yes, well, I'm actually doing Twitter, so I'm just thinking that the key thing for me is that there's not a lot going on in Twitter, and I think that's because people are so engrossed on the content today. And to me, it's this session is almost like a fresh air to the quality improvement network in healthcare, because it's just so it's learning such new techniques and new thinking. So I think that's probably why people are absorbing so much today. So I don't know if Janet's got any of the questions that are coming from the chat room. But yeah, keep the things coming on in Twitter. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, there was a question here. Let me just quickly go back to it. And it's really from Shane Moore, who's asking, how do we get consistency or agreement across an enterprise? And are there any particular approaches that you found beneficial?
Mm-hmm. All right. I think so. The methodology that I'm just about to explain is actually one way to say let's already focus on what is important, and let's not focus on what is not important. And bring in data and evidence that this is the right thing to do. So this is some alignment. Then when it comes to ensuring that the different parts of the enterprise, or the different groups, the different silos, the different teams are actually pulling in the same direction, then it gets into, okay, making models like this one, for example. This is a model of content, and bringing order into these kind of models by saying, okay, which are the most important things, and can we organize ourselves around these few nodes when it comes to engaging with patients before treatment, during treatment, digitally, physically, and so this is actually a domain model that then can be used in order to model digital channels. It can be used to model information systems. It can be used to model patient flows and processes, and sharing this and making this a working tool is what we think is the key to get the consistency that we need.
Can I add, Milan, here just quickly, that I think it's also a matter of getting the right data and information and documents and models and so on to the right people at the right time. We often see that people have many versions of the truth, or so-called truth. So that's one of the things we are focusing a lot in our platform, to make it a truly collaborative tool. So if I, as an architect, model something that has to do with some process owners, I notify them, the system notifies them, and so on. So we strongly believe that we can actually do a lot with technology in improving consistency across the enterprise.
Right. And I hope that we get to because of time to the demo of these kind of tools. So just let me just speed up a little bit. So yeah, so in this case, the enterprise accepted reorganizing around those concepts, and it resulted in redesigned digital interfaces, also a new repartition of who's responsible for content. Is it the central healthcare governance body? Is it the local hospital? And really taking these two entry points and then mixing together information, because one of the most important insights coming from the research also was that patients or potential patients are actually not differentiating between practical information and medical information. Yeah, how long will it take to treat this? What is the procedure? Who do I have to contact? Where do I have to park is mixed with what is it? What is really wrong with me? And what kind of help do I need? And yeah, this means that yeah, you have the treatment, of course, and then you have the information needs that come in at the different parts of the treatment, and this includes before, during, and after. And designing for this entire journey is important when you tackle any of the top tasks. So it's more than just saying, okay, we need to redesign the website in order to give people what they need when they want to find out what's wrong with them. We actually have to look at the entire journey. We have to see how this task manifests at the different parts in the different steps of the journey. And it also, of course, means that we have to concentrate on a few groups that we are designing for, in this case, patients and people who are concerned, like family and friends. And then there are other people that are addressed, like, of course, the staff, and then other target groups that are important to make the entire system running. And this is where it gets into the more systemic, the systemic change and the systemic transformation of enterprises that are increasingly becoming digital. And this is where I pass over to John.
Thank you, Milan. So basically, I'm going to tell a bit about a project we've been working on with a Danish hospital construction. But a bit of context: if you think about the digitalization of healthcare, because that's, at least in the Scandinavian countries, seen as one of the major drivers. Just for context on Norway, Milan talked about Norway. The saying in Norway is that right now every third person in Norway actually work with healthcare-related issues. In the future, because of the aging population and things, it would almost be half of everyone who should work with it if you didn't do anything. So digitalization is not just something we want and have been working on, but something we need to focus much more on. If you take a standard capability model for a healthcare provider, it typically looks like something like this. Oh, where did it go? There. So IT systems and operations is one small fraction of the healthcare IT and the healthcare provider.
The slides do actually not advance. Maybe you need to present them all.
Let me see.
I've just moved it on for you.
Okay. So if I move the next one, will it move?
I'll do that for you as well.
Okay, I don't know why I can't control. You're now the presenter. Sorry about that. I don't know what WebEx did here. This slide here, IT everywhere, you should see, right?
Yes.
That's an actual mapping we did with the capital region in Denmark. There's some 14 hospitals or 18 or something they're building new. And ongoing digitalization efforts from the central IT division. So basically, it's not just down in IT systems and operations. You need to think about the whole change and transformation of the enterprise. It's more or less everywhere in the enterprise. the mappings here were green existing and red ongoing. But anyway, so just to say it's everywhere. And if you look into especially the IT vendors, of course, but also in general talk about it, the concept of a digital hospital is getting out there. This here is just from IBM. There's many others with a kind of maturity model and a digital hospital framework. But lots of people say, well, this is very IT-centric, so this is, of course, what the IT people and the IT vendors and the IT department says. But in reality, we see that a lot of healthcare personnel and professionals, they are actually taking in the new technologies. This is just an effort in Denmark from one of the regions who have a large effort about digital innovation, and they get sponsorships and funding from various places, government especially, but also foundations and whatnot. So a lot of effort is going on here, and you may well know the HIMSS maturity models. They are international, and by and large, the efforts in Denmark are about saying, well, we are already now around stage 6 overall, and we want actually to reach stage 7 and maybe even get HIMSS to talk about stage 8 and 9 and so forth, because we are getting to a level where we need to have this, not just the closed loop care coordination across different care team members, but the whole knowledge-driven engagement for the dynamic and multi-vendor, multi-organization, a very interconnected delivery model. So that's basically the effort. There's a mapping here that Denmark tends to be fairly advanced in this. Only Singapore scores better. Sorry, I couldn't find where the UK and England is in this, but I guess you know about that. So anyway, the intent here in Denmark is to say we want to invest heavily in modern healthcare. So they are investing, and I'm not sure the conversion rate is right now, but over £4 billion in new hospital facilities over the next years. That might not sound a lot for Great Britain, but think about Denmark. It's a very small country, so you basically have to scale it by 15 or something to get the proportions. So it's quite heavy. And one of the efforts is to say, well, we built what is used to be called the super hospitals, so bigger units, centralization, but also decentralization of a lot of the healthcare services. So lots of telemedicine and whatever it's called, e-health solutions. So chronic patients don't need to go to the regular control in the hospital. They use devices in their home and video or Skype or whatever to talk to their doctors and nurses and so on. So basically bigger units for when the need for operations and stuff are there, but get people away from the hospital, so they only come there when the actual need for hospital services are there. That is, of course, somewhat of a challenge. Over the last years, the healthcare sector in Denmark has been pushed by government and sort of the national budget to save a lot of money. There has been a sort of requirement for efficiency increases by 2% per year for each hospital in Denmark and so on. They just started saying, well, maybe that's not the right way to go. We may need to invest more, but it's very recent, actually this week, some political decisions were made about this. But over the last 5 or 8 years, there's actually been a lot of cutbacks in this sector. but at the same time, as mentioned, huge investments. And one of the investments is in Odense, the fourth largest city in Denmark, but the sort of, according to many, the Center for Healthcare Development. They're building basically the largest university hospital in Denmark, and they are relocating the existing university hospital from the city center and moving it out to the University of Odense. And with that, they established a vision for the digital hospital as a key principle for the whole new development, where they say people first, through research, education, development, and collaboration. Digital solutions will be for all, to all, between all, everywhere, and always. So that's how a vision should sound, right? And one of the issues, and that's where they started using design thinking, is to think about the whole patient journey. Actually getting to the hospital and from the hospital is often a burden for the patients if you've been through an operation and so on. And the hospital don't want people to stay in the beds more than absolutely necessary, so it's about getting them home after the operations and treatments and so on. So there's some issues. So they worked on thinking about this. So part of building the new hospital is actually building a new light rail system from the city center to the new campus. And of course also arriving at the hospital, finding a place to park your car for the family and so on and so forth. And from the entrance to where you actually need to go. There's a lot of challenges for people, and that's why they have modeled digital touch points, all types of technologies. Since the hospital is going to be built now, they're just starting. They think, well, in the next 4 or 5 years until it will be operational, there will probably be some new technologies and so on. So they have people out looking for what's new, digital science and whatnot. So it's a green field, but connected to an existing hospital. So they need to think about the transition in a most smooth way. So they can think anew. That's a benefit from all this. Think out of the box. They, for example, plan to have only single rooms, not shared rooms, because it's more patient-centric. And they, of course, thinking a lot about the planning methodologies and so on. If anyone is into enterprise architecture here, they've chosen a standard methodology called TOGAF, and the methodology in that it's very generic for enterprise architects. So you cover both the strategic parts, the business processes, the data and information sharing, and all the IT systems, the applications, and the infrastructure. And they they made some maturity assessment. Are we ready for this? And basically, as you see in the bottom here, found, well, they're actually not very mature organizationally, but that's one of the reasons they brought in enterprise architects with a design and collaboration focus very early in this whole process to get to the actual visions. They use a bunch of methodologies for strategic design, the whole patient-centered approach, rather than system-centered or treatment-centered. They think about strategic alignment in all their investments, also IT investments. And they think about the whole standardization and integration of all this. One of the challenges, there's a lot of words here, sorry about that, but one of the conclusions they found is that the logistics are key to this, both in terms of getting more efficiency, but also to get the right people empowered, so patients should know where they need to go and so on. All of this is part of the logistics. And what they actually found, and I found that very interesting in our work with them, is that a lot of effort traditionally goes into the clinical logistics, because that's the sort of core treatment and so on. But the patient experience is actually greatly improved or not with the service logistics. So if a patient needs to be picked up by a guy who takes them to the treatment and so on, all that logistic stuff is actually what creates a lot of uncertainty and doubt for the patients. So they want to improve on that, the whole service logistics side of things in the hospital. I think I'll skip that, that's more detail. And that's where we started modeling. This here is Archimate notation, but a lot of different ways of modeling this, and Milan will show a little bit here in a few minutes. But of course also a lot of workshops with nurses and doctors and also patients to understand the processes and how to improve the processes. Since they have a running hospital, they use some of the facilities there for test beds to check all the new solutions. Does it actually work? And so on. They build real models. They do prototyping and user testing and so on. Actually have taken in the whole design thinking approach. And this is just summing up on some of the architectural challenges. I just want to mention one, the naming conventions and getting people to talk the same language. On and on, that proved to be one of the biggest challenges, but there's plenty of challenges.
All right. Thanks, John. I would propose that I just go very quickly, like 5 minutes demo of how we use design sprints and models when dealing with these kind of things, and then we hopefully have 3 to 5 minutes for feedback and discussion. Is that okay?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So, do you see the approach slide?
No, I don't see that.
Okay. Can you give me the presenter thingy?
Yes, I can see that now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so the way we do it is basically say, okay, we use the design sprint methodology, so from Google Ventures, from work with startups, and then fuse that with the enterprise design framework with the stacks mostly. So look at everything that matters, decide what we need to focus on and what we ignore for now, make the small bite-sized chunk of enterprise, assemble a team, and then work on the enterprise incrementally with a adaptive design thinking or design sprint methodology, so going through the typical steps, but using the stack and the thinking about the different aspects that we need to look at and the different levels as a kind of guide. Yeah, using it basically like a lift, so going from the very big picture to the anatomy, thinking about it using the frames, making up our design space, our design decisions, getting to a rendering, testing that, validating that towards the different dimensions, implementing it and delivering something hopefully that has a big picture impact, and iterating, of course, a lot. Casting teams, including the disciplines that we need on board for this, but also the different stakeholders that need to be involved, making models, and in that case, really overcoming modeling bias. So a business analyst and a service designer will make different models for the same challenge. So connecting those different ways to think. This is where we invented this language that is similar to the Archimate language that John had one example of, but focusing more on the enterprise design space. So a very simple language of just the 3 elements, which is squarish is like a noun or an entity. We have fish process-like thingies for activities, and we have qualities, and then using this as one language to model different things, like, yeah, for example, processes, customer experiences. This is an example from our work with a startup here, a healthcare startup here in Paris, where I'm based. So taking, for example, a customer experience map with insights on what's happening to patients with data, like in this case, for example, that people are always late, and this is messing up our schedule, and that missed appointments are actually one major issue to tackle in French hospitals. So let me just try to share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. So this is just an example of, this is the web front end from Qualiware. So you see our framework, the Enterprise Design Framework stack is in there as a guide, basically. So we can, for example, click on the experience icon and hopefully get, for example, our hospital customer experience map with, for example, the patient journey and questions and things that surface from user research or from data analysis, and the different things that then appear in the journey. We can drill down basically by saying, okay, what does the customer experience look like if we model it on a touch point level, which becomes then more, I would say, more of a descriptive and less of an experience insight thing. So what are really the channels, what are the actions, and what are the touch points of interaction? So the focus shifts from the customer experience overall to more of a descriptive thing. We can look, for example, who is using this touch point, this Web 2.0 touch point. We have Kevin, who is a millennial. So here's a persona that we integrated in the repository, so we can make links between the different aspects, in this case the people aspect, which is personas, and the touch points, but also, for example, technology. So we have here, for example, our persona library with the different personas that we are designing for. And then we can combine those different elements in blueprints, where we can use all the different elements, for example, to say, okay, what is our overall hospital mapping? We have the customer experience on top, we have the touch points and the service design below, and then we have architecture capabilities, like, for example, patient management, knowledge management, and something very practical like handling payment, which we can then also describe in more detail and with a different language that is more adapted to operational design or process design, like BPMN or business process modeling notation, or workflow diagrams. So EDML as a language is designed to integrate different viewpoints and then link to languages or notations or models that are more specifically designed for one purpose, like a persona designed for generating empathy, or this process model designed for actually making it work as a system. Yeah, just for the example, so we have our insight that we know that our hospital is suffering from this patient being late. So we actually make a blueprint that is specifically mapping the elements that are relevant to this problem. So the touch point on top, or the task, the customer journey on top, and then we say, okay, what do we need to change in order to improve this? So we introduce here, for example, a new service, which is the appointment reminder service. This is an example which introduces a new step in the customer journey, but also a new capability. And we can also, for example, make a prototype in our design sprint and link that into the repository. So this is all I wanted to show, and we are kind of right on time. Just one more thing, which is otherwise people will get very angry. We are doing a design sprint training in London, 23rd and 24th. So if you're interested, I will put the link into the chat. So, feedback?
Thank you so much. We've got a few more questions just before we finish. We're hopefully finishing at 10:30 or just beyond 10:30, so please bear with us. Paul, I wondered if you could help us to just put Jane Answell on. Thank you, Paul. Are you there, Paul?
Maybe on mute.
Hi, thank you. Just really interesting. Absolutely love the both presentations. One of the challenges that I think we face is that, you know, when patients are admitted into our A&E departments, it's highly visible. Their patient journey is shown throughout the hospital to various members of the exec, and you can see the journey that people are facing and how they and how close they're getting to a 4-hour deadline. But once they're admitted into the main body of the hospital, that disintegrates completely, and the patient's journey becomes invisible. Mobilizing that sort of scrutiny around why patients are waiting on an hourly, never mind daily basis for treatment and reducing their length of stay is a challenge that we are facing. For many hospitals, they haven't even got electronic observations. So that is still an enormous transition that we have to make. How do you think that that's being tackled in Denmark?
I would actually say that some of the stuff we're working on nowadays is based on us already being heavily digitized. So we have patient record systems and all that in place. Even though that creates a mess, that's just a ongoing thing with the capital region, and they just introduced a new patient journal system, and that has had some transition challenges because they, for example, move from having medical secretaries to type in to the journal and have the doctors do it together with the patient, and that's a social change for many of the physicians, and they have a challenge there. But anyway, I think the digitalization and the data-driven thinking is fundamental to all of this here. So we can talk a lot about and have design sprints and whatnot for the perfect patient journey, but if the data and information is not there, then it's uphill all the ways.
Yes, I agree. I work on an expert group that includes one of the line managers from Jaguar, Land Rover Jaguar, and they have 45 seconds to fix part of the line that goes down. That would bring about a delay in manufacturing, and you can only imagine that sort of thing happening if a patient waited longer than 45 seconds for something they needed.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much. It's just been fantastic having you both, John and Milan, and everyone who's participated either in Twitter or on the chat room. This is again a really fascinating area and so much information here to take on. The recording will be available on the Edge website as well as the slides. So if you are looking for more information, it will be available to you today, later on today. But I would like to just give a big applause to John and to Milan for taking us through such a wealth of information. And we've obviously got a lot to learn, a lot to share and a lot to learn. And hopefully we'd like to invite you back at some other point, but we know that you've got the book out and we know that you've got an event coming up, so we'd like to promote that and support that as much as we can. So to everybody, have a very good weekend. I'm so sorry that we've just gone over the 10:30 mark, but it's such an interesting area, so please bear with us. So thank you, have a wonderful weekend, and see you at the next Edge Talk, which is going to be on the 3rd of November. So if you do want to stay in touch with us, please let us know in the chat room. We will keep the chat box open for a little while longer. If you're interested in staying in touch with us, then let us know. From all of us, from the Edge team, Edge Talk team, we'd like to say a big thank you and see you next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Take care.